Well, welcome everybody. My name is Nick. I am from Channelbytes. I am here with my partner in crime, Cameron, also from Channelbytes. We are absolutely stoked and excited to host a conversation today with two people that are smarter than Cam and I. The first is Dimitri from SonicWall. The second is Jason from High Point Networks. And we're going to be talking about, no joke, if you're caught with your pants down, what are you going to do in the IT world? So seriously, though, we are going to talk through, the pandemic 2.0 playbook, the things that we wish we really would have had. It's going to be an open conversation. Please throw in questions if you have them, and we'll try to grab those during the session or afterwards at the end. So with that, I will turn it over and let Dimitri and Jason introduce themselves. So we'll start with Dimitri.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Dimitri Arapetov. I am a VP of Platform Architecture at SonicWall. I've been with the company for almost 15 years now, but I can honestly say I think it feels like 5 different careers. So anyway, happy to be here, happy to share experiences, observations, and want to listen to the questions.
Hi, I'm Jason Herner with High Point Networks. I've been with the company now 14 years, actually. It seems like yesterday since we started this journey, so it's always a fun time. But just account manager, working with all kinds of industry and our customers and partners, and yeah, excited to be here as well.
Great, thanks so much, guys. Well, obviously, so for those of you who don't know, Channelbytes, we're an IT community platform. We try to get a lot of really smart people and have great discussions about things that are going on. So for this conversation, we're going to start out easy, even though, as Dimitri was talking earlier, he's done the swim from Alcatraz, which right off the bat tells me he is not one to slouch away from hard things. So, but let's start with an easy question for both of you, which is really, what's the single biggest learning or takeaway you guys have had since March, since the pandemic started, right? We're in August now. We've had lockdowns. We've had a lot of activity. And in the world of IT, lots happened. So, what's that single biggest thing that, takeaway you guys have had?
Jason, you want me to take that, or do you want to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that I observed can probably be summarized in that business continuity trumps security, right? This is me saying that from a security vendor point of view. But what I observed is, it was a rush for business continuity, and then of course, and that's important, right? And if we go down, for example, the same route in the next 3-4 months, etc., it's the most important thing is for companies to allow their employees to continue to operate. But of course, now that it's not going to be an emergency, we have actually time to plan. Security is a very, very close second, and if not done correctly, it can actually undermine business continuity in a big way. But anyway, I'll save that for the rest of the discussion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, Dimitri, you hit it. I mean, the business continuity piece of it trumped everything. And it wasn't necessarily so much about the continuity plans that everybody had put in place. It was the continuity plan multiplied by 10-fold because it affected the entire organization versus maybe one little aspect of it, which is a lot of what the plans are built upon. And not only that, everybody else was going through the same thing at the same time. So it kind of flipped everything upside down, really.
It's interesting that you guys say that. I actually was working with, in January, a business continuity professional out of Ottawa, Canada. And he literally said to me, businesses typically don't take continuity seriously until something crazy happens. Like, imagine if a pandemic hits.
Just imagine.
Well, I mean, because the news was just starting to come out of China that there was a virus, right? But it's interesting. It was even more interesting to hear SonicWall just tell me that continuity was trumping security right now. But I get why that is.
But that's what we observed. There were companies that there were. Literally, I was reading conversations, on various forums or had discussions where all these, poor IT folks who were like, I just got out of a meeting with the exec staff and they told me by Monday the entire company has to be remote. What do I do? By Monday, right? And why? It's so that we can actually continue to sell, produce, build things, etc., and the business actually stays open. Right? So that's priority number one. And whatever duct tape ad hoc solutions they threw up, of course, now that creates a fascinating security discussion because, and I see one of my colleagues joined me in the background, but so that creates obviously a fascinating security discussion from the perspective of all the hackers are basically, kind of licking their lips at all the ad hoc systems thrown up and all of the remote workers. And again, that's why I was saying, even though continuity trumps security, security is like a massive, it's a huge second thing that's like right behind continuity that can completely undermine, if not done right, it completely can undermine the business.
Well, let's speak to that a bit, right? What are the gaps and actually, Jason, I'm going to ask you first because I think you're a little more boots on the ground. But Dimitri, we're going to come back to you. What are the gaps that you saw in your clients, in your customers? Whether it's IT, business, security, just what'd you see?
So, and really, we saw kind of the variety across the board. I mean, every customer had their own little differences and gaps. I mean, some of the companies that felt that they were really adequately prepared for continuity in case a single location went down. I mean, it was tested heavily. And when the fact that it was just like Dimitri talked about, it wasn't that, one office was going to be sent home remote. It was, we're going to send all of our staff home remote and you better be prepared. So that was a big challenge with a lot of organizations, not only just with the hardware, the components that they had in place for their employees or their team members to take home, but with the systems that were in place to connect them. So, there was a lot of scrambling. There was a lot of, ad hoc, just get it to work. And then there was a lot of people on the flip side too that were trying to, how do we make this as secure as possible? But it seemed like that was on the latter side. So, but not only just the connectivity pieces of it, it was ensuring that all the applications functioned the way that they needed them to keep the lights on and the doors open without that presence in a brick and mortar type building. So there were a lot of things that were going on, lots of challenges across the board.
And if I may add, what this effectively does is this kind of took companies into kicking and screaming into digital transformation. Wherever they were on the digital transformation curve, right? This is like, you have no choice. You're coming with me now, right? And so in a way, it's and this it's not done, right? And the smart companies right now, the smart organizations, whether it's out of necessity and they're still resisting, or whether they're embracing it, are now building ways, embarking on that digital transformation journey. And for those who are listening to this, and digital transformation is a broad topic, what I'm talking about is, can your company operate fully digitally? Are things digitized? Can you transact your business? Can you add value, whatever it is that you do as an organization, and interface with your customers all digitally, right? That's kind of the digital transformation conversation. So and larger organizations, enterprises, et cetera, they are already there, right? They have professional IT staff, they're already there. I think it's the mid-sized and smaller organizations or public institutions that got kicking and screaming, were forced into this journey. And I don't want to emphasize that this is a journey, because it takes time to transform.
It's interesting. I talked to a business owner the other day that he was very anti-cloud, and he realized though that he was almost, to your point, he was almost forced into having to make this transition and make this move, because at the end of the day, he now had a remote workforce. He had to change and he had to change in, not only in people and process, but systems. He had to make a shift, and that was hard, right? And he wasn't.
But this is a good thing.
It's you don't always know what to do.
Yeah, but did
I just hear this is a good thing?
Yes, I think this is a good thing, right? Because what effectively is happening is that IT administrators now have a license to do what they may have been trying to do for 5 years and would have been getting resistance.
It's the pandemic.
Resistance. They got a license to do whatever needs to be done, right? And listen, I was speaking to a CISO of a large university in Europe, and this is late March, in the thick, this country was one of the ones heavily affected. And he is responsible for 50,000 students, faculty, researchers, et cetera. And he was like, my daily active users of Microsoft Teams went from 1,000 a day to 25,000 a day in a matter of 2 weeks. And now I'm starting to change my future investment plans of where I'm, and like a lot of users that he had, and he kind of uses a caricature. He was like, yeah, some of the old crusty professors still using Office 97 who refuse to change. They're now actually have been forced to change, and they actually like it. They're like forced to learn something new. He's like, now I can get rid of a lot of this stuff that, you know, I had to hang on because they would refuse to change. So that's what I'm saying. It is an opportunity because you've got basically a license to do whatever needs to be done without any sort of, you know, negative organizational pushback.
I remember when I built my first website, my mom said, I mean, that's cool, but you're going to need to like get a real job, right? Love you, Mom. I hope you're not watching because I'm sending you this clip. Jason, what was a hard lesson that you or your company or maybe one of your customers learned, right? We're talking about opportunities and just gaps and all that kind of stuff, but I can't help but feel like there were some painful lessons that people went through. And if there's people listening to this, whether live or in the future, what's a painful lesson that maybe they could avoid?
You know, I did ask a few of my customers the same exact question. Like, we were trying to figure out some details around, you know, what really went wrong. And for the most part, it necessarily wasn't a, boy, that just really hurt hard. I mean, it was just a bad deal. It was more of a all hands on deck. Let's come together as a team and let's figure this out. So I can't really say there was so much of a really hard lesson. It was how do we become the most ingenious, creative, you know, IT staff out there to get this done and to move on from the point of sending people to the local retail boxes while they're still open to buy every last laptop off the shelf to, you know, trying to have, you know, work with the different departments to retool themselves. It wasn't necessarily a, you know, drop dead hard lesson. It was just, how do we evolve from this? How do we get through it? I think everybody was in such a hard mindset of just getting through it that's kind of where it landed.
Yeah, I can resonate with that.
So we obviously, you know, this is a lot of the lessons learned from the past. What are people talking about right now? Like, I mean, you're obviously, Jason, you guys, as Cam said, boots on the ground, you're talking to people. Dimitri, obviously, from a SonicWall perspective, you're talking to a lot of partners. You're talking to a lot of end users globally. What are people talking about now that's different than what they were talking about even 30 days ago?
Right. So, you know, I'll start here, Dimitri, but I think everybody's more worried, not necessarily about the pandemic. They're more worried about the schools right now. Are their kids going back to school, or do we have to go through homeschooling 2.0 this fall? So there's definitely a lot of worried, you know, parents out there wanting to figure out their work life, how that's gonna look again this fall. But besides that, you know, looking back and trying to be, you know, somewhat rewind the tape a little bit and maybe undo some things that were done. I mean, there's a little bit of that. Most of our companies that we've worked with do feel pretty comfortable with the situation that they're in, but knowing that security is a huge thing, right? So yeah, you really need to take a deeper dive at the security aspect of everything that was opened up and allowed to be remote that wasn't before. And, you know, what does that look like? Making sure two-factor authentication is on everything across the board, and then even kind of taking to the next level of figuring out, you know, where they're at with performance of those applications. So I kind of equate it to this. We have like 3 different tiers of where we felt everybody was at. The companies that had no presence on remote and they were drug into it and they needed to get it going really quick. The ones that had it and were trying to expand it even further beyond what they had today and just get it done. And then the ones now that have it done and they're like, okay, we have a remote workforce. We got drug into this digital evolution and we're there. How do we make sure that all of our team members and employees have the best tools available at the best performance available? Do we have to retool things in the back end? So that's kind of we're kind of more playing on that third aspect of it, of, you know, the security aspect, as well as how do we get these systems to perform when people aren't in the building anymore the way that they need them to. So it's not, well, I'm working from home, I can accept the fact it's a little slower and I'm not going to get as much done. Yeah. We don't want to go down that path. We really want people to be as productive at home as they were in the office.
So do you see this as Dimitri said, as an opportunity from a technical perspective for businesses to take that next step to try to move into kind of the next technological advancement of efficiency for their business?
Absolutely. I mean, the companies that weren't already built to be just 100% remote workforce and have thought about that and thought through it, everybody's getting drug into it, as Dimitri said. They're literally getting drug into it, kicking and screaming, and it's a great opportunity to truly reevaluate everything from business process to the tools and the applications and the systems that you're using. So there's a lot of opportunity here to be more efficient.
If I run a business, like a financial business or a healthcare business, is it fair to say that maybe right now I should be very invested in my security if I have my team that just went home, right? Like it just seems to me like, well, no, I'm just thinking out loud here. Like, so you're talking about all these people that continuity was the thing. So let's get everybody home and let's get them working. My question is, if I'm a dental office, if I'm a radiology clinic, if I'm a bank, does that not put a lot of risk on me?
So, all of the HIPAA requirements and the PCI requirements that whether it be financial or healthcare and all of the other requirements that are out there, by all means, there's a lot of things to take a look at. I did talk with a few organizations about that as well, just to make sure, how are they handling that component of it? For the most part, it seems like, even on the PCI side, the things that they had put in place before on the technology side to protect the organizations, they do kind of flow nicely through whether you're working from home or you're in the office, right? I mean, the same DLP type protections or whatever might have been put in place, those things do tend to help. The HIPAA side, we're actually ourselves still trying to figure that part of it out and asking our customers to make sure, what else are we missing? Is there anything that we have to be concerned about? So we're kind of a little bit of a gray area at the same time, just with our customers at the same time, trying to figure out, what needs to be done in that aspect.
Well, look, I'm colorblind, so I live in the gray area. Okay.
So let's take it a layer down, right? Because some of the folks, I think, we have some technical folks listening as well as non-technical, but let's be very specific. Dimitri, from businesses, the things that they should truly do from an operational continuity, productivity.
Yeah.
What should they be doing right now? Not in 30 days, not in 60 days, not in 2021, when things hopefully smooth out. Like, what should they be doing technically right now?
Yeah, so there are several things that I'll start with the highly tactical, right, and then I'll kind of pop the stack and we'll talk a little bit more high level. So by now, if you don't have multi-factor authentication enabled on your either email, remote access, whatever cloud applications that you're using, you're absolutely insane. And I'm saying that as a vendor that does not sell multi-factor authentication, go to any of those other vendors, do that thing first, please, and I'll explain why in a little. Keep coming back to this of why this matters. Multi-factor authentication right now is the most basic hygiene that you can possibly have with remote work. This will protect you from phishing email, credential theft, which can lead to business email compromise, or it can lead to actual, breaches, right? Because we're now working from home, we're relying on logging in. I'm logging in from my personal PC. How do you, IT administrator, know that I don't have a Trojan running here that's collecting all the keystrokes, right? Or maybe I'm, reused my password, and now that my password's floating out there. If you don't have, this is where MFA is your safety net, right?
Or if you're a 17-year-old hacker that's trying to break into Twitter.
Yeah, there you go, right? But it's MFA, number one. Number two, and I saw this a lot in March, and if you did this, fine, whatever, water under the bridge, fix it right now, right? We're kind of in the delinting phase. Phase one was get working. Phase 2 is delinting, like figure out, okay, well, that was not a good idea. Let's actually fix this now. I saw a lot of people just opening up ports to RDP, to remote desktop protocol. It's convenient. We'll just let people remote. Oh my God, please don't do this, right? I saw one of my favorite posts that I saw on a sysadmin forum where, and I use it in my presentations as a screenshot, and somebody's like, the hackers right now are licking their lips at all the hastily put up RDP instances, like on the internet. Like, you will be brute force. There are vulnerabilities. If you haven't patch, by the way, right? So there are tools to provide a level of indirection. So let me stop using philosophical terms. If you open up a port to remote desktop, right, then anybody on the internet can knock on that port. Turn on things like VPN, SSL VPN with multi-factor authentication, which now, like, you first authenticate to a gateway, and that gateway then takes you to the remote desktop. So there are no ports. You're not opening up ports directly to RDP. You're not exposing the naked RDP protocol to the internet. And while we're on the topic of VPNs, and this list is long, by the way, I'm just focusing on the top 3 right now, is patch your systems, right? And if you don't want to just listen to preaching advice, read all the government advice right now from NIST, NSA put out warnings. People took their VPNs off the shelf because VPN was dead. They plugged it back in, but it's not patched for 3 years. And you know what? There's been a number of vulnerability RCEs CVEs posted over the last 2 years. There was a a DEF CON talk last year specifically on exploiting VPNs. We know for a fact that nation state actors are exploiting vulnerable VPNs, but since the information is in the public, so are script kiddies, right? So if you have a VPN facing the internet and you have not patched it to the latest, greatest, whatever, right? You're playing with fire. You are, so top 3,
it's almost
MFA,
like if you're playing with fire, but you're kind of naked on the internet. You talked about, like, it's all bad.
I'm using all these analogies, right? So I don't know what you're all imagining at this point, like naked people playing with fire on the internet. I don't know what, but the point is multi-factor authentication, right? Don't open up direct remote desktop. Patch your systems. Now, there's a long list of other things. We can get into some of the other more elegant solutions, more scalable solutions. But right now, looking for that's the delinting conversation. Like, if you've done any of this or you haven't done any of this, do it now. Preparing for the future, right? Preparing for the next several months. There are kind of there's some pedestrian advice, sort of like, look, most of your vendors have some sort of plans or some sort of programs to help you. Like, many people actually have, like, VPN appliances, for example. Most VPN appliances, most of those vendors, they have capabilities for, like, snow days, right? And initially those capabilities were built for, like, there's a blizzard for 3 days in New York. Okay, so yes, you don't need to license 10,000 or Jason, where you guys are, right? Like, there's a blizzard, everybody works from home. Temporarily, we'll bump up the licenses to the maximum, but we're not asking you to pay for that, permanently for like 10,000 users or 1,000 users. Though there are those capabilities. We're in an extended blizzard right now, so those capabilities do exist, right? Talk to your vendors, find out. You may not necessarily need to buy new things. You might just be able to use what you already have, right? But plan for capacity. That extreme work from home experiment that we had, well, we're still in the middle of, may continue, and most likely will continue based on where the trajectory is, right? So anyway, I'll save more advice for later, but I just want to hit those 3 very, very hard.
Clearly a subject you're not at all passionate about.
Yeah, he's got a lot of
Would you like to know
that.
more? Would you like to know more?
Jason, do you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Even to add on to that a little bit. So, we're at that phase right now where, obviously, just like Dimitri said, we've got to patch things, 2-factor authentication, clean up the firewall ports. Let's unwind some of the things that might have been maybe not necessarily so much best practice. But,
exactly.
But not only there, take it to the next level. Now that those practice or those components are in place, go back into the optimization piece of it. VPNs and deployments and the way that these solutions are laid out. There's a lot of different things and technologies out there, and how we can strategically place even VPNs at different locations and optimize them. And quite frankly, make redundancies in place, right? You need to, if these solutions are now what you're 100% relying on, probably a good idea to make sure that these solutions are a little bit more redundant than they were once in the past, where you were only using them every snow day or whatever it might have been. So definitely lots of opportunity there to help beef up that infrastructure.
And there might be listeners out there right now who are like wondering, like VPNs. Even we had an analyst note that came out like we thought VPNs were dead, and it had kind of this Monty Python moment. It was like, I'm not dead yet, I'm getting better, So, but there are organizations that still use them. But if you're listening and you are an organization that doesn't use VPN, totally fine. That's, there are cloud native. There are companies that have transformed fully to SaaS services. This is where MFA and CAS or CASB solutions come in, because now you're facing a completely different problem right now, right? You've got people working from home. They're logging in directly into Box, Dropbox, SFTC, etc., right? How do you secure that? So there is a set of solutions there as well, but the most important thing there is MFA, right? Just turning all that on. And I just want to make sure that the listeners don't think this discussion is only about VPN. VPN is useful, right?
Yeah.
But there's also cloud and SaaS component as well.
And I think even when we say continuity or redundancy, I mean, that's got a lot of meanings too, right? I mean, there's, you probably define continuity in a different way than somebody else, right?
Yeah, and for me, I don't know, Jason, if you want to take that. Just for me, what I observed was business continuity right now was, how do I get 3,000 people? Like, real use case, another customer in Europe, it's an insurance company, right? They had typically 400 people that can access remotely. Suddenly, over the weekend, 3,000 people. How do you do that, right? And that creates a number of lessons and challenges, right? Like, you cannot procure 2,500 more laptops for corporate IT equipment, but you have to let those people work. So continuity. So here's a real case scenario. And this was very educational for me as well, because I spoke with the partner there, and he was telling me, he's like, Dimitri, this is where some of the things that are really, really nice in normal scenarios go out the window. You guys talk about you have to make sure that every endpoint that connects to the corporate network is latest, greatest patch, and latest Windows 10 is a corporate IT device. That sounds perfect, except in this scenario where we sent 3,000 people overnight to work from home, you got to let them connect from whatever they've got at home. It could be a Windows 7 laptop that's shared with kids at home, whatever, right? My definition of continuity is using that as like, you still have to let that employee log in, connect, and work. Now, how do you do that securely? Now, they had a solution. They had a very interesting solution where you use effectively reverse browser isolation capability, where you render the work desktop via HTML5 on the client machine. So I can log in from the most virus-ridden machine into this network, as long as I have MFA, because if my passwords get stolen, and I can and the network, I can continue to do my work. I can do whatever it is that insurance companies do, right? But the point is, the admin at that company now knows that whatever garbage I might have on my dirty network is not traveling, is not traversing over, cannot possibly get into the corporate network, right? So that's my definition. That was, to me, a quintessential, example of like business continuity in an emergency time. Like, what do we got to do? Let's get practical. Drop the philosophy.
I want to toss just a quick plug out there. If you're listening and you just moved to the cloud, or a bunch of people in your organization moved to the cloud, we had an interesting conversation with Scott Jenkins from SonicWall last month. We actually talked about cloud access security. And if you think your cloud apps are secure after watching that event, it's on our YouTube channel, so please check that out. But you may find yourself humbled after what I know. I personally went and checked out my settings and was a little alarmed and got my poop in a group, so to speak. But yeah, if you're in the cloud, you may not actually be as safe as you think. Check out that. It is on YouTube. End plug.
So Jason, what's your view of continuity? How would you define it?
So the continuity, I mean, I think business continuity, like I mentioned earlier in the beginning, our concept of business continuity changed quite a bit, right? It's not that brief instance, single site where we just need to have some continuity, or even a data center going down. You still have a place where people are coming to work, right? You're still coming into the office. They're still using those infrastructures, and they're maybe connected to a DR site. And if something truly drastic happened, with an organization, our whole concept of continuity now is, okay, I got to send everybody home, and so does everybody else, and I have to contend with all changes of organization, not just technology. It's the business process. It's everything across the board. Our version of continuity, like I said, it's changed drastically in that sense. But I wanted to touch on point on what Dimitri just said, when we were talking about VPNs. we're not really necessarily talking about site-to-site VPNs and even client-based VPNs anymore. We really have shifted beyond that in technology, and we're really more about how do we securely provide applications, whether it be over a site-to-site VPN, which is not likely, but through different tools and media that we have out there, reverse proxies and whatnot. And then you take the whole cloud aspect of it as well. All of those types of solutions are on the table and available for everybody to take advantage of. That it's the most secure way at this point is to shift from that old concept of just allowing your BYOD device to have full access onto your network. Really don't want to go down that path anymore. We're trying to stay away from that.
Let me double click on that while we're on this, right? That is, I think, one of the pressing issues right now. Like if you ask me, like, what should people worry about right now? And what I would worry about, right, is if I was in charge of a network, is I'm connected from home right now. And the easiest thing to do is just to give a user, a VPN access tunnel. And you know what happens is that with the most basic kind of easiest thing to do is this network here is now, congratulations, it's now an extension of your corporate network, right? And now anything that's going on here is an extension of corporate IT, and you don't want that, right? And this is where we start getting into those more so you're granting the employee the ability to connect and to work. But are you also building a full-on bridge for, again, whatever garbage I might have here, right? If I have whatever teenage kids or something downloading Fortnite cheats, every one of those, which is a virus, right? But the point is, like, that you don't want that. So how do you isolate it? And we can discuss, maybe later in the webinar, we can discuss some of the spectrum of solutions. But what Jason's talking about, like building a full tunnel and remote access, that's where, like, you got to start asking, like, do I need to give a full tunnel? Maybe I just do that reverse browser. Maybe I do per app granular control, right? And that's where that spectrum of, like, how paranoid, how secure you are, but you do have to be cognizant of the fact that with just building a tunnel, this is now your corporate network as well.
So Dimitri, on that topic, I mean, does it matter? You're really more focusing on the end user in the remote situation versus the type of business. Or does it matter, right? Like,
Yeah,
if you're in the healthcare business or financial business or education, is it less about the vertical and more about the actual setup at home?
I honestly actually don't know, because I don't know all the intricacies. I know at a high level, right? But it's not enough to actually differentiate. I look at it as, like, general issue, right? And for example, anybody who deals with more regulation might be more sensitive to this, right? But there are ways of, like, I have another anecdote where there's another partner in the Midwest in the United States that shared with me that basically an insurance company, right? They close down X number of offices and they have massive savings from rent, et cetera, but they sent everybody home. So the way that this conversation came up is I was discussing a particular use case scenario where I said, hey, I was testing the idea with the partner, and I was testing the idea of having a Wi-Fi island. I said, hey, what if we had very, very high value, but generalizingly low tech folks that typically work from the office, like, for example, HR, legal, right? They typically go into the office, they work from the office, but they deal with very, very sensitive data. And I was floating this idea with a partner. I said, what if for those customers, right, for those users specifically, you gave them for example, an access point that can do all the security and build a tunnel. But the point is, they get a corporate Wi-Fi in home, so their kids can't connect to the corporate Wi-Fi, but they're like as if they're in the office, and the security is provided through that. And that's when the partner said, like, Dimitri, that's like, that's small, that's peanuts compared to what we're really doing. In that case of another insurance company in the Midwest, he said they sent hundreds of people home. They closed down the offices. They converted to 100% work remote, and they sent full-on, like, enterprise grade, small but enterprise grade firewalls, et cetera. And they're like, it's a drop in the bucket from a cost for them, from a cost savings that they have from closing down the offices. But now they can also still have, like, a island of security inside the home network, and then they can do compliance, they can monitor the traffic, they can do all this other stuff, right? So, but again, it's a spectrum of how far do you want to go. So coming back to your question, Nick, based on the vertical, this was an insurance company, so I assume they have a whole bunch of stuff that they have to comply with. It's worth it for them. Another company that might be dealing with less sensitive assets where like a breach, okay, it's a high inconvenience, but it doesn't bring down the company, might want to just deal with VPN and endpoint suite or, something like that. Again, it's a spectrum.
So I just heard Dimitri say that we're not supposed to sell hundreds and hundreds of enterprise firewalls. Maybe I'm wrong.
No,
This
but
is
honestly,
being recorded.
I try to. It's whatever makes sense. Like I want it to be resonant, right? I want to resonate. Like what makes sense? Because if I said that, oh, everybody has to have an enterprise, like it's easy to dismiss. It's in some cases it makes sense. In some cases it doesn't make sense. At the end, we want to basically provide good security. Where it just comes down to peace of mind, right? That you now have a extreme distributed enterprise, not just branch offices. Like every single employee is a branch office. How do you deal with that, right? So you take all the learnings from branch office, from distributed enterprise experience, and you now expand it to every single employee effectively. It might just mean software, or it might mean hardware.
So easy to use, easy to deploy, and highly secure. I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's our end goal, right? Especially with the way that the world's ever changing and with all the remote users. That's kind of what that's the ultimate goal.
And the deployment right now in that scenario, the deployment is the key, right? The ability to, for example, and I'm, Cam, I'll copy you a little bit. This is a little bit of a plug here, right? But just the ability to deploy. So one of the things that we've done recently is zero touch deployment, right? Like you can literally do a office in a box, send it off, and never have to visit the site, and just tell people plug it in, walk away please, right? And then it goes to the cloud, does a bunch of auto magic, and then from an admin perspective, they're like, boop, there's the location, apply template, done. Now but there is no truck roll, so to say, right? Anyway, went a little bit into the different capabilities, but the question was like how to provide different security. There is a different spectrum, and there are different tools. So what you just got to do what makes sense for the situation.
I wanted to comment on the vertical bit. I run watch websites and motorcycle websites, and the frequency of brute force attempts has scaled up hilariously since all those people went home. You know what I mean? You can see the graph. You can see the traffic go down because, but then you can see the force burst attempts go up. And it's like, oh, what a wonderful combination of graphs. Mm-hmm. I just want to. I think we could let's summarize the last 20 minutes because we just talked about a lot. So, Jason, 3 things that like just the top 3 things. 20-second elevator pitch. Everybody rushed this migration to remote to cloud. What are they facing from a problem point of view? What's the solution?
So 3 top things, I think we talked about the security aspect, just double, triple checking, engage your local partner to, help make sure that your environment's secure. I mean, that's probably the most important one, because I tell you what, that first one falls and something happens, security breach, it's worse than a pandemic. So we don't want to go down that path. The second piece is, just making sure that your systems are set up and reliable for this onslaught wave of the next, call it wave 2 or whatever is going to happen up here in the fall. Just be prepared so that way the amount of people working from home and the performance of those solutions are set and they're built and they're ready to go. And the third is, it still comes back down to business practices and policies within your organization, just to ensure that you're set to work from home effectively and efficiently in all aspects, helping your customers to helping your employees, just across the board.
Awesome. Perfect.
And just so everybody knows, since Jason, he doesn't just have an amazing home office. That actually is his office. So it's the rest of us.
We're a little lucky. I mean, being from where I'm at, for our density per person we measure in square miles, not square feet. Like you guys are at.
You're definitely social distancing. So.
Automatically social distancing.
Automatic,
by the nature of my location. So
or as Dimitri says, it's automagically a social distancing.
Yeah.
That's a great word.
That is a good
word. A technical term, actually.
All right, so Dimitri, from your perspective though, as things happen,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, if you're gonna ask and answer the same question, that's good.
Yeah, so I was going to answer sort of similar question. So I would, right, and I think Jason's much closer to the customers here, right? He sees
Yeah.
the pain. So I would take his advice in terms of going forward more than mine. Mine is just more like state of mind, in a way, but just do prepare for the next 9 months. And there's no excuse this time to do things ad hoc, okay? Because March was a surprise.
Right.
I don't know, October, November, whatever, right? If things like I'm in California right now, it's kind of frustrating for us because we were one of the first epicenters where I live, Santa Clara County. We were one of the first epicenters in the United States. We clamped it down, but now it's going back up. So it's frustrating, but whatever. So if this comes back up again in October, there's no excuse to be surprised again. So what we discussed earlier, MFA, patching, et cetera, what Jason said, capacity of resources, bandwidth, et cetera. Just at this point, nobody should be caught by surprise and you have to worry about, do you have sufficient licensing? Do you have sufficient capacity? Do you actually do this business continuity with security? Because now, whereas in March, it was okay to prioritize business continuity over security. Now, a single security event, Jason, I think you alluded to this, a single security event can bring you down, right? A single large security, and with everybody being and I'm not trying to scare people, it's a reality. I work from home. Let's say that my computer, I'm using my personal computer also as my work computer, and I click on some website. I don't have, let's pretend, I do have a firewall here because they're free for me, right? But if I have a Linksys router from 2005 Linux running Linux kernel 2.4 with multiple remotely executable, multiple RCEs, right? I get something on my machine. My credentials get stolen. The attacker can take my credentials, knowing that people reuse the credentials, log into O365. Oh, they're not an O365. Maybe let's try G Suite, right? Chances are I'm going to be on one of those two. I don't need to hack your company now. I just need to steal. And I like to use this term. It's like, I need to steal the least technically capable person's credentials to get into the company, right? So, or the most technically gullible persons. If I have their credentials and you don't have things like MFA, right? I'm in, all right? I get into your 365, I get into your whatever. I can try all the cloud services. It's easy for me. Maybe Cam, that's why you're seeing so many brute force attacks, right? So, there's no excuse now. I think now, going forward, security and business continuity are on the same level. Not one trumps the other.
I was talking with a vendor in the financial space, and they floated the statistic that there has been an up to 84% increase in automated malicious bot traffic to the login pages of a lot of their customers. 84%.
Password reuse, baby. Password reuse. Yeah, that's what ridiculous. It is. I can download databases, gigabytes and gigabytes worth of stolen databases of credentials. I have bots, and I can start. And this comes back to that whole RDP, open RDP, and not having 2FA. So you do have an employee who used the same, password 123, right, everywhere. Now you have 2FA. That's your safety net. So, sorry, I keep coming back to that. There's nothing more important you can do right now from a security point of view than MFA.
So what else, I guess, Jason, what else are you telling your clients now? Obviously, those few checklist things, but is there, are you recommending that, they have audits? Are you recommending that they, work with people like you guys? They work to take that next step? Because as you said, not everybody, the small to medium size or even enterprise, they don't, philosophically, they may know what to do, but they don't know maybe practically how to take that next step. And that's partially what, we want to make sure people know.
Yep. So that's exactly right. So, what we're recommending here at High Point Outworks is, we're working with our customers that have quickly deployed a lot of solutions in a very short amount of time to engage security services, to engage just a audit of the organization of how those applications are how they're working, what they're doing, kind of just starting from soup to nuts again, right? We do the traditional penetration testing and all those different aspects all the time, but it's more about, the practices and the best, the best practices, and then just the audit of the organization. That's kind of where we started at, and we're just trying to work through that with our different customer base. It's too many changes at too little bit of time. There's too many possibilities for a mistake. So we just want to, you know, take the magnifying glass back out and take a look at those things.
I guess, Dimitri, we're about running out of time, so I have a last or soon to be last question. From a technology perspective, is there anything that's come out? I mean, VPN, obviously, we joke about it being an old technology, but is there any new technology that's come out since the pandemic, or things that have been brought forward that are helping solve some of these problems?
Um, Not even necessarily since the start of the pandemic, right? Tools have existed. Tools, there are many of the problems that are faced today, the tools have existed for that. You know, I like a saying that the future is here, it's just not distributed evenly, right? So the future has been here, it's just now it's time to distribute it more evenly, right? But okay. VPN, we talked about VPN, old technology, everybody knows, still useful. And by the way, when we talk about VPN, I mainly talk about SSL VPN actually, because that's where all the advanced authentication technologies, et cetera, are, not the old IPsec VPN. And that's useful not only when people think on-prem, they think physical building. That's not true anymore. A lot of organizations, what they've done is they said, I'm getting out of the business of running my physical data center, but I have a system. So what they take is they basically forklift that and they pop it up into Azure, AWS, you know, et cetera. But that still has to be behind certain in a walled garden. So VPN is not just to a physical building; it's also to public cloud, kind of private networks in public cloud.
Yeah.
Okay, but everybody understands SSL VPN. It's a very useful technology right now. We talked a little bit about CAS, Cloud Application Security. And what I like to those who are listening who come from more traditional networking backgrounds, I like to start the discussion of CAS with, there's no software to install, there are no appliances to deploy. Okay, just approach the conversation of cloud application security that it's a cloud-to-cloud service that talks via APIs, right? And there's nothing for you to deploy on your network or on your users' machines. It's a cloud-based security service. Then we go into more kind of traditional solutions for the new age. So network security, I'm talking, you know, firewalls, access points, etc. And I actually, you know, if I was to make a prediction, I think we will see a large surge in the next year to year and a half, and it's a way overdue, of enterprise grade security for home. For the last 9 years, at least 9 years, security experts have been, you know, every other month there is yet another release of how some TP-Link or D-Link or some other consumer grade $20 router has massive vulnerabilities. Forget a default admin password. I'm talking about like basics, remotely exploitable vulnerabilities that are botnets built on these things, right? Now that organizations are going to realize that people's homes are an extension of their network, there's going to be an uptick of enterprise grade security for home. Okay, how to deploy? So this is where I can talk, you know, there is enterprise grade, we do have enterprise grade security for home in small form factors. The key there is centralized management and remote administration, right? The ability to manage thousands of them through a single console, the ability to deploy them with zero touch, the ability to have an access point. I should have one. Oh, there we go. Let's bring some props. We
need props,
right?
We need props.
The idea of bringing something like this and just telling a user, you know, just plug it in and walk away. Don't touch anything else. People know how to plug it in, right? This thing will actually build a tunnel, can be configured to connect to it'll automatically connect to the cloud management console, and can be pre-configured to, when it goes online, to build a tunnel to the network in a secure way, whatever, all the stuff that an admin does. From a user point of view, they plug this in, and 5 minutes later, they have corporate Wi-Fi. Right? Or might be a PoE port and they plug in their soft phone or their printer, but they have a little island inside of that, again, you know, dirty home networks. And again, I'm talking about things that might seem, they're not sexy terms. I'm not talking about blockchain connecting to IoT with machine learning, right? But it's pragmatic stuff that's actually going to solve problems right now. And I think that, you know, the home networks to me are the soft underbelly right now from a security point of view in most companies. If I was a hacker, right, I like to think of like, what would I do to be the most a-hole, basically, right? Like to screw people up, right? I would target homes. I would target home networks, because people are not thinking, they don't have security there. And right now,
he
with
has
everybody from
evil
home,
Dimitri somewhere in the internet.
but you got to think like that, you know. You got to think like that. You got to think like, you know, if you can think like, how would I screw people up, right? How would I get in? Then you can also think of solutions for that.
Yeah.
And I think home networks right now are again, soft underbelly ripe for exploitation.
Oh, I think you're so right. So right. If you think of the average technical acumen of the typical person, and that person's going to connect to your Wi-Fi and may inadvertently have access to your network. So my Wi-Fi network at home is called still loading. And invariably, people come over and they tend to be 35 and up, and they go, "What's your Wi-Fi ID?" I don't know. It's still loading.
Yeah, it's still loading.
But just consider that, right? Because I think that if you're technically savvy, you're going to be like, "Huh, that's a funny,
yeah,
right?" But if you're not, you're going to be like, "Oh, well, it's still loading."
Still loading. Yeah, don't use.
And those are the people connecting to your home network that have access to your corporate.
People will also have just default whatever modem. Most people, right? And I should pull up statistics on this. How many people have just modems that come from their ISP with whatever software router,
more than
software they got
60% probably.
Yeah, and that's what they have. And then the ISP, how many times have you had a phone call with your ISP that says plug your laptop directly into the modem? I'm like, no,
Right.
I would never do that. They're like, well, sorry, we can't support you then. And anyway, that's home security. That's home network security.
So I got a question for you, Dimitri. This is a conversation we had internally. We were talking about it. Is at what point do you believe that, or if ever, that organizations are maybe going to somehow be a little bit responsible for the performance of that at-home network, right? I mean, especially companies that may have adopted more of the BYOD approach. You just utilize your home machine and we'll get you connectivity in and go from there. But yet you've got the Fortnite, the Netflix streaming that's causing network disruption. How do you is the IT department at any shape or form somewhat responsible to provide assistance to that? And or even take it to the next level, you're talking about security, you were talking about hardware security within the home, but what about even that endpoint protection? EDR at
Thank
home.
you. Yeah.
Let's deploy it. I mean, it really wouldn't be that much of it. Call it an employee perk to say, hey,
no, 100%.
Let's let you have a couple clients for your home use, your personal use, just get it on all your machines. If your machine's going to run a lot better at home because we're helping you protect it and you're going to be more productive, that's an easy win.
100% agree with you on the endpoint client. Now, I completely had a brain fart. I completely forgot to mention that, right? And that's a super easy thing to do. I don't think companies are going to take on the full network. That's too hairy of a problem. I think if anything, they'll say, here's your work environment, your home environment, you're on your own, right? Because it's just too much. Liability is not the right word. It's like now you're tech support for people's homes, right? But giving them endpoint clients or giving them these islands, to connect, that's a much more controllable, and the scope of the problem is much more controllable. I fully expect, I fully expect that, especially as companies start seeing money. I'm a firm believer of incentives. And once the financial, and for companies, it's the only incentive is the financial incentive. Once financial incentives align, I fully expect that to be the case.
Yeah, I think there is a little bit of merit on the enterprise hardware approach as well, as far as deploying something in a home. I can very easily see, to simplify a lot of things, it's a lot easier to say, hey, we're just going to put that router in place. It's not going to be a D-Link or anything else. It's going to be ours. And we're going to give you plug your stuff in over here, and I don't really care what you do with it. But all of this is our corporate side, right?
Exactly. That's exactly what I mean.
It's too easy to make things simple for an IT administrator to not have those help desk. Everything's running slow again. Well, no, actually, we're good now.
And I can monitor, and I can control, and I can see it all through centralized management and with remote. And the key here is, I'm not visiting somebody's home to set it up. I send it, and with that zero touch, through cloud management consoles or on-prem, whatever, it's a choice. There's no on-home visit, right? And that's especially during in normal times, that would be a lie. You don't want to send the people into people's homes, etc. Today, it's even more obvious.
Right.
So I guess the bottom line is there's really no excuse at this point. So we've learned a lot. There's really no excuses for businesses going forward to try to now take those precautions, do those things, because they have a little bit more runway, right? They had the pain. Yep. Now they're catching up. Now, as Jason said before, I mean, let's hope things don't get worse, but obviously it seems like they are. So be prepared, right? That's, I guess, the message. Be prepared.
Fool me once, fool me twice situation, right?
Yeah.
Well, guys, I know we're about out of time, so I want to, on behalf of Channelbytes, I want to thank SonicWall as our sponsor for this, having Jason and Dimitri on. Tons of great information, tons of great insight, and practical to-dos of what needs to happen. And I'm thinking Dimitri may be on the Motley Fool about the investment in technology in the home here soon, but
don't take any of my advice. I timed the market, but the wrong way. So do inverse me, inverse Dimitri.
If you have any questions, obviously this will be on demand, and obviously from SonicWall, you can go to SonicWall's website or High Point Networks. Jason, Dimitri, thank you so much for your time, your insights, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for having us,
Everybody.
Take care.